Hello and welcome to the Zero Hanger mock draft for 2023. Technically the second edition of our mock draft, first one on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. So we're going to break down the entire first round, which is 28 players.
28 selections. There's 22 at the moment in the first round, but we're seeing that to blow out to 28 selections before we hit the night 2 of the draft.
Beautiful. All right, well, let's jump straight into it. So I'll take the picks and you tell us a little bit about each pick.
Cool.
So first, a pick, probably no surprise to anybody, West Coast, and they're going to be taking Harley Reed, according to you.
Well, we discussed this last week, and I'd be surprised if he's not playing round 1 next year. So that's not only for West Coast, but he's one of the most ready-made players we've seen come through for some time. Where they play him as well will be interesting. If it's in midfield or they can really use him behind the ball. Carlton did that when he played for their VFL side and did a little bit of that this year as well, but he can also play forward. Just given he's great in the air, he can really just turn things around so quickly in a game. So, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, I think, for that one. They're carrying pick 1 into the draft. There shouldn't be any late trades, I would have thought. Given they had the window, and I don't think they'll pull a late move, so they'll be taking Harley Reed, I would like to think.
Yeah.
And he's exactly what they need to headline a long rebuild. They did really well to get some local guys in last year. They'll probably have another year next year of working at the bottom of the ladder. Could be another year on top of that, but they'll turn around, and a lot of it will be with Harley Reed at the centre.
Yeah. And question without notice, but he is pretty much, nobody's name has come up as the number 1 pick so far this year. Is he that far ahead than the rest of the order?
I think talent-wise, probably not. The kid we'll name next is probably one that could rival him for pick 1, but I guess it's probably because he has ties to a club that if it was open slather in any club could have access to between Reed and him, then it's probably a lot closer. But Reed's ahead. Yep. Just generational talent. I think we'll see exactly why he's been touted so long as well. There was talks last year that he really could have been a top 5 pick from last year's draft as a bottom major. So, can't wait to see him play.
Awesome. All right, so with the second pick, so North Melbourne have the second pick, but you'll think they'll nominate Jed Walter, which is, of course, a matched academy bid for Gold Coast.
Yeah, so like I said, he's probably a name that would be a lot more spoken about if he wasn't a Gold Coast Suns academy kid. If he was available to all 18 clubs, there'd be even a bit more trading to get up. North Melbourne would love him as a key forward that's almost 200 centimetres tall and weighs 90-odd kilos. Kicked 18 goals in 4 games at the Talent League. I think it was 11 in 4 games for the Allies in their premiership-winning national championship. So, really just strengthened his case, and that's probably why he's going to be selected at 2, and that bid will come in at 2. North Melbourne have picked 3 as well, so it wouldn't really make much sense for them to bid on him at 3, and you may as well make the Suns cough up as much as they can. So, I think pick 2 is where that first bid will land, and we'll probably have a couple more for the Suns on night 1 of the draft.
Yep, absolutely. So, as you said, North Melbourne also have the third pick, which is, of course, the Ben McKay compensation pick. So, who are they taking?
Yeah, so this is their first of 2 selections. The original pick 3, which we'll push out a pick 4, and this being pick 3 from pick 2. Zane Dersman's the first one. The same as in our first mock draft, so the same first 3 picks we've kind of aligned. I don't really see that being too different. It's really going to come down to who North Melbourne pick with their other selection, but you'd think Zane Dersman's going to be one of those 2 at picks 2 and 3, or in this case will be 3 and 4 after an academy bid. But yeah, Dersman, I guess viewed as a half forward, or it's his best role as a half forward, can really be a third tall forward, can play through midfield, just mercurial, X factor. It was just been an absolutely fantastic second half of this season. Went on a real great run after the championships ended with Gippsland. And his last game for Vic Country was really, I think, what kick-started that. 4 goals, I think 3 came in the third term when the game was kind of in the balance, and really just flipped it on his head. I think you look at him as like an inverse Nat Fyfe, so more forward than midfield that we've probably come to expect from Nat Fyfe over the last few years. He's kind of just that tall player, athletically gifted, and just has a lot of things going right for him in regards to what putting up numbers wise, and also the kind of impact he's having on games. So yeah, Zane Duursma will be one of the two guys selected by North Melbourne, I would think, in those first 3 to 4 picks.
How does he stack up against his brother?
Different players. So obviously Xavier's more of can be a wing half forward, whereas Zane's probably a bit taller. Can be more of that aerial threat, and can probably play right inside the midfield a bit more as well. And then they've got Willem coming through. So on top of Xavier and Yasmin already being in the system, Zane will join them. And then Willem just looks like a key position talent like Zane, who's a couple of years away in the draft. So then we could have 4 Duursmas in the AFL.
Yeah, geez.
In a couple of years.
Few too many, I reckon. All right, so pick 4 will be North, obviously going to get pushed out. So and you are predicting Dan Curtin.
Yeah, so as opposed to our first edition mock draft where we had Colby McKercher going in this role, this is the second edition is more just looking at other avenues, and if clubs are weighing up 1 or 2, first edition was looking at one way, and second is looking at another, and the ripple effect that those kind of have on the rest of the count. So I guess looking at who the Roos are going to take with that selection on top of Duursma, and Curtin's the one we've gone with in this edition. Key position talent's what they need, whether it's backline, forward line, through just that whole spine, I think is really going to be important for them and how they're building. They've targeted the midfield a lot with their opening picks. It's kind of gone back and forth a little bit with gaining and losing someone like Jason Horne-Francis. Got George Wardler in last year to kind of fill that void again though, and Harry Shearsall even played some midfield. I think he'll probably resume more halfback or forward roles, but that could also depend if they take a midfielder. For Curtin, though, straight away can be playing at halfback. Maybe he stands at 197 centimeters, but can probably play a bit smaller than that, or even take the third tall, second tall forwards. They lose Ben Mackay, so he's kind of a good one to pick up with that compensation pick. Had a lot of senior experience this year with Claremont. Just a really strong worker, aerially gifted. And one of the more ready-made guys. So I think it would probably be good to get a balance of Duursma and Curtin. But like I said, McKercher in that first selection is probably one that they'll look at as well with a bit more speed through the middle.
Yep. All right, so speaking of McKercher, so pick 5 would be Hawthorn, and then you're predicting McKercher.
Yeah, so kind of a swap. So from our first edition, so McKercher went to the Roos and Curtin was picked up by Hawthorn in our first mock draft. And this one's again, just another avenue for clubs to look at in our second edition mock draft. So the Hawks have a few names to consider, and it's kind of who of maybe Duursma, McKercher, and Curtin is still available when they're on the clock. And then on top of that, do they look at Nick Watson? But in this case, I think Colby McKercher's a nice one to kind of add to the likes of John Newcombe and Josh Ward and Will Day in midfield. Just a bit more pace and run through the middle, breaks lines quite nicely.
Yeah, he's a bit smaller, is he?
He's 180 centimeters, so it's not. Yeah, he's not quite a tall player, but right on 6 foot is going to be nice for them. Just had such a great year for the Allies, and just a real match winner as well for them. Like a lot of these guys at the top are the ones that are probably where they're standing because of how much of an impact they have on some of these games, and some of his long goals for the Allies late into that championships was really stood out. And then his efforts with Tassie took out the Morris Medal with just 8 games. Tied with Pat Hughes, who I think had 13 games. So he just, when he played, he played really well. So that'll be a great one for the Hawks if it's him or Curtin. Or even, like we said, Watson could be one that gets swooped on by the Hawks at that selection.
All right. So with pick 6, it'll be the Doggies and Riley Sanders.
Yeah, so this will go one or two ways, I think, and it'll be a Watson or Sanders call. They've probably traded up to this selection because they've got someone in mind. And it could, again, just be whoever's left over out of these two. If Sanders goes early as well, and he could be one that North look at. Watson's one that I think the Dogs will probably go for, and that's why we had him in our first edition. Second edition, we've got the Dogs picking up Sanders. I just think that their midfield probably needs another name in there that they can look forward to kind of calling on in the years to come. Like they've got Bailey Smith, but uncertainty around his future this year and likely next year when he's off contract is going to be a big chapter for them. I think Tom Liberatore is 32 next year, still playing his best footy ever, but they have to kind of put in a succession plan for him. And, in 5 years' time, Bond's going to be that age. Jack McRae's that age. So if it's not Smith, then who's that guy? And Sanders can be him. took out the luck medal this year as the championship's best player. Just a great ball winner, clean, evasive, knows how to win the ball, and knows what to do with it. So between him and Watson, I think for that Bulldogs pick to start.
All right, and pick 7, so Gold Coast, and they'll be taking Ethan Reed as a Matched Academy bid.
Yeah, so the next bid coming from Melbourne, and the Suns being able to swoop on Ethan Reed. So it's going to be quite a costly night for the Suns from a draft points perspective. They're going to need to get their affairs in order, and they might even have to do more trading depending on when and where these bids come. But if 7 and 8 is probably where the one comes for Reed, they'll be, I think, happy enough with that one. He's really just grew this year into probably the best ruck prospect. Can play behind the ball as well. Really athletic, great in the air, aerobically gifted as well. So ran a nice time at the 2K time trial at the combine, and is another top 10 academy or top 10 pick this year, I think, from the Suns Academy. So they're reaping the rewards from some of that pathway development. He's going to be kind of that long-term maybe successor for Jared Witts. They've got Ned Moyle, who's quite promising and probably won't be able to knock down that door yet, but he'll have some competition from Ethan Reed, who at the same time will be afforded time to develop, which is what he needs. He's got a lot of upside, but he'll just need that time, and he'll get that with Witts and Moyle ahead of him to start his career.
Beauty. All right, so next is the D's and Connor Sullivan.
Yeah, so one of the better key defenders this year, standing nearly 2 meters tall, can swing forward if you need him to. And I guess this is kind of like the Harrison Petty successor if we're kind of matching some of these guys up to why or who they might replace in the best 22. And that's probably more because Petty's future as well is a bit up in the air, given what we saw this year, his comments that followed. And he's got a contract for 2 years, though. And that might work well. If he leaves in 2 years, then O'Sullivan should be ready by then. Took out the Allies MVP in their premiership winning campaign and would work really nicely, I think, and alongside Jake Lever and Stephen May, the latter of those two being, into the twilight of his career as well. So, he was absolutely fantastic for the Allies, did really well for the Murray Bushrangers, had some big matchups. And I think it'll be him, Riley Sanders, who I think the Demons selected in our first mock draft, around this kind of selection for the D's to consider.
Yep. And with pick 9, so GWS, and a name that has been, is it the Wiz?
The Wizard, yeah.
Yeah, Nick Watson. Like that.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad nickname to have coming into the league. And it just kind of goes to show, I think it reads nicely because he's got this endless bag of tricks. Really, really smart, cunning forward footballer, only 170 centimetres tall. I don't think we've had someone selected so early at this kind of height for some time. You don't get it. A lot of 170 centimetre guys come through the competition anyway. And they really do have to be really skillful. You think of Caleb Daniels slid to, I think, almost pick 50 in his draft. And that was because of his height. And I think, he was probably touted as the most skillful player in his draft class, but the height was a big knock. And I think now clubs probably don't look at that as much as they did back then. And that's probably why Watson's rated so well. He's probably one of the top few for just his skill set alone. Can turn a game on its head. Had a great championships for Vic Metro. Wasn't their best championships, but he was a standout. Can play behind the ball if needed to. I think he did so in one of the AFL Academy games. For GWS, it's an interesting one. This is kind of them picking up the best available talent, I think. They're pretty rock solid for spots kind of all across the ground, maybe a key forward. And I think in our first edition mock draft, they picked up Nate Caddy. And in this one, they're kind of looking at Watson, who wasn't available to them in the first edition mock draft. So, a bit of a slider compared to maybe where he was or where he might go. This is kind of just looking at some alternative selections. And then I guess is the flow-on effect to see him slide to pick 9.
Yep. And pick 10, so Geelong, familiar name, Nate Caddy.
Yeah, nephew of Premiership Tiger Josh and ex-Cat as well. Nate is 193 centimetres, but he plays a lot taller. So you think Charlie Curnow is kind of like a similar height, 193, 194, but he's one of the best contested marks in the game. And that's kind of what Nate Caddy is in this year's draft class as well. It'd be nice for Geelong, I think, to pick up a key forward. You've got Cameron and Hawkins is going from 1 year deal to 1 year deal, and could certainly call time on his career next year, and Caddy can be the next one up for them, along with Ollie Henry, when they want to kind of replace the two Coleman medalists in the future, and they'll have an Ollie Henry and a Nate Caddy to potentially do so. And in our first mock draft, the Cats took Connor O'Sullivan. So you think it's probably going to be one of those two, if they're both available, that they'll run with their first selection.
Yep. And Essendon's first pick at pick 11, Caleb Windsor.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one just to see who's available to them. It could be a Caddy, it could be an O'Sullivan. But if it kind of pans out how this draft has, then Windsor's going to be among the last couple from, I think, their top 1 or 2 tiers, and before it kind of cuts off, and Essendon are going to have access to one of those players. But Windsor's kind of a kid who's, I think, risen up a little bit among a few rankings, and just a classy outside winger, really clean hands, really good ball use, and just a smart player as an outside midfielder, and good attacking traits as well, just with his scoreboard impact. So he'll be one the Bombers consider. I think we had Ollie Murphy as the player they picked up in the first edition mock draft, so he's another name that would be available in this count as well. Darcy Wilson's another, James Leake's another. So there's a few that are going to be in that next pool that Essendon will have access to. And like I said, it's going to be quite wide open, their draft plans. But if a Caddy or O'Sullivan are available, they'll definitely, I think, take that key position route.
Yep. All right. And pick 12, so Gold Coast, probably the last one of the first round. So Jack Rogers as a National Academy bid.
Yeah, so the third of their likely 4 for the draft, and whether that fourth one in Will Graham comes in the first round remains to be seen. But yeah, you can expect Rogers to go top 15, top 20 for that bid, and usually the bids might come a little bit higher, or earlier, I should say, just because clubs might want to just force their rivals to pay up a little bit more. But Rogers is, I guess the clone term comes up a little bit around draft time, but a really clean comparison for him is Touk Miller. So just a really strong tackling midfield presence, hard nut, not the tallest bloke, and he's quite small, similar to Nick Watson in size, but he has a lot of strength and attacks the footy really nicely. He can play forward as well, and that's probably where he'd probably start his career if he gets a look next year. Is more in attack as that defensive forward asset, but he'll learn a lot off someone like Touk Miller and Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson, and he'll get that time to develop, given those guys will lead the charge under Damien Harwick. But yeah, a bid for Rogers, you'd think, could come in the top 10. We've got him at pick 12 in this one. I think he went pick 11 in our first one, and could blow out to maybe 15. Unlikely it gets out to 20, but he's another one that's going to really excite them, and played some VFL this year, so he could get a look at senior opportunities next year for sure.
Yep. All right, and for Adelaide's first pick 13, James Leake.
Yeah, another one that's kind of come up the ranks a little bit, and like I said, could be a one for GWS or Geelong to look at in the top 10. Essendon could certainly have a look at him. Just a great swingman option. So can play backline, can play forward. A bit like, I guess, Jeremy Howe, if you look at his career in its entirety. Just great leap and great vertical and good hands in the air. And that's something that certainly makes him a defensive threat as an intercepting option. And then you can go forward and have those same marking traits, but then also has a real clever eye for goal, and can certainly pop up and kick a major if you kind of need someone to move forward and have that impact. And he did that with Taz in the back end of his Coates Talent League campaign, and I think he kicked 15 goals over his last 5 or so games in the competition to kind of show scouts that he can play at either end. So that's probably what will have him so well rated, is his versatility. And Adelaide, I think they probably just need some fine tuning across the ground. They'll love some defensive help. He's 187 centimetres, so he's more medium sized, but he'd be a nice one, I think, for them to kind of swoop on with their first pick.
Yep. And with the D's second pick, so pick 14, Darcy Wilson.
Yeah, they'll be quite happy if they come away with Darcy Wilson and Connor O'Sullivan, I think, with their top 2 selections. 2 Murray Bushranger boys as well, so they'll have teammates. They picked up Caleb Windsor in the first mock draft, so just another kind of outside midfielder. Wilson probably a bit more attacking, can play half forward. I think he ran a sub-6 2-kilometre time trial, which is, astonishing. I think it was the second best behind Tarkin O'Leary. And yeah, he's just quite a clean operator on the outside. Good tank, can just run all day.
Yep.
And then you look at someone like Lockie Hunter when we talk about succession. And Wilson could be that one that kind of finds a spot on the wing in the years to come with Melbourne. So that'd be a nice little 1-2 punch for the Ds if they could add Wilson to the selection of O'Sullivan.
Yep. And pick 15, so Sydney's first pick, Riley Hardiman.
Yeah, so Kenny Beatson, I think, kind of likes to just look at the best guy available.
Yep.
When they're on the clock, they've got their list, they back their system in, and they'll probably just be looking at who's at the top of that list that hasn't been selected yet. And Hardiman's a good chance to be that guy. Captain of Western Australia this year. Difficult championships for WA, but he's a standout. Knows how to find the ball. Offers plenty of rebound out of the defensive 50, 185 centimetres, so he can kind of play a bit tall as well. Has good intercept traits, and yeah, he's could be that name. I think that the Swans go for. James Leake, who's already been selected in this one, was one we had them selecting in our first mock draft. So it's going to be they do really well, the Swans, and they've done really well with some WA kids over the last few years, and Hardiman could be that one for them for 2023.
Yeah. They always seem to draft very well. Pick 16, Western Bulldogs with the first matched father-son bid is Jordan Croft.
Yeah, so I guess one that Bulldogs fans would have been nicely watching as the year progressed. He had a really good middle third of the year. Like, he's steadily risen into a top 20 prospect, but his middle third was outstanding. I think he kicked 21 goals in 7 games for the Calder Cannons in a certain stretch. Leading into finals, and then he had, I think, 3 appearances for Vic Metro and did okay there as well. 200 centimetres, so just another tall forward that the Dogs have ties to after Sam Darcy and Jamari Ugle-Hagan over the last few years. They've already got Aaron Norton, Rory Lobb, Jed Bustlinger on their list, so that their spines, they didn't necessarily need a 200 centimetre tall forward, but he's going to be a nice addition. And again, there's another one that gets afforded time to develop and kind of work on his craft at the VFL level. They let Jed Bustlinger do the same all this year after taking him with their first round pick last year. And as far as the bid, it could come, top 10 at more likely at 10 if it's going to be top 10, but anywhere kind of between 10 and 20, you'd think, for Croft. And here it's pick 16. I think in our first mock draft we had it at 12. So it can certainly sway, and be interesting to see which club kind of forces their hand and makes that bid. But he's a nice kind of second edition after whoever they pick up with pick 5.
Yep. And pick 17, so the Saints and Ollie Murphy.
Yeah, key defender. They picked up James Van Ness last year pretty late in the draft. I think Ollie Murphy might be a nice one for them with their first pick. Sandringham kid as well, so they kind of like those local links. We had Colton Tholstrup as their first selection in the initial mock draft. It certainly could be a live one for one of their first 2 picks. And Murphy's the same, could be there for their second first round selection of the night. 200 centimetres, won Vic Metro's MVP. Just good height on him and uses it to his advantage, obviously. Good marking ability, but he can also run quite nicely out of the back line and has smart and clean ball use. So he's quite a different key defender. And like I said, just out of East Brighton, so wouldn't have to move too far to Moorabbin. And we know the Saints are kind of targeting local kids. Maybe it's more through trading, but through the draft is certainly going to help them as well. And he'll be one of the first 2 selected in this mock draft for the Saints. So there's another one on the way as well.
Yep. And pick 18, which would be Adelaide's first pick, would be Harry Demeter.
Yeah, just a bull at the gate in midfield. I like to think of him as like a Liam Baker type, though, with, he's not the biggest kid, doesn't have one specific role, can play him at half back, half forward, in the middle, but he just goes to the ball. Great leadership qualities. He was co-captain of Vic Country and Dandenong Stingrays, was even a part of Australia's junior cricket team squad. So one of those dual sports stars who I can never understand how they get to do that. But he'll be one I think Adelaide might consider with their first pick. Like I said before, they probably just need a little bit across the ground, and he can offer a lot of run. has good speed on his side as well. So that'll be a nice one for the Crows to consider. Archie Roberts might be another one at this kind of pick. They took Riley Hardiman in the first edition mock draft. I think they look at a ruckman, and there's a few on offer, but they might hold for their last first round pick to use that on a ruckman, I think. So yeah, Dimatia's could vary in where he goes, but Adelaide might be the first club that really have a look, and depending on how the first 17 selections unfold, and this is probably where they could go.
Yep. And pick 19, so North with Lance Collard.
Yeah, so they've got 3 of the next 4 picks. I think Collard's one they'll be hoping is available. And they've also got to think who GWS take, who's the next one, before they have another 2. If GWS do take Nick Watson in this case, like they did earlier, then maybe they don't have to look at Collard, the Roos, and they can wait and think of a player that the Giants might be more interested in, because it's unlikely they'd take 2 small forwards. But Collard out of Subiaco, real quick, evasive, agility, kind of the traits that be tied to him. Just a speedy attacker, good eye for goal, and kind of what North Melbourne need. So he'd link up with Rob Hanson Jr., who the Roos also picked up out of Subiaco. So some familiar faces for those 2 at Arden Street if this is the way it was going to go. So it'd be interesting to see if he's one that's available. And if they think that the Giants might take him, the next pick, then he's the one they'll run. But if there's, one of the other 2, another name that they think the Giants might be interested in, then there's certainly a good chance that they could hold Collard's selection until one of those picks at 17 or 18, which is the current reading. And I think it'll be 21 and 22 in this draft. So, Collard was one that was also taken at pick 19 for the Roos in our first mock draft. So that's one link that's stayed the same across both counts.
Yep. And pick 20, the Giants, you mentioned him before, Archie Roberts.
Yeah, so one Team of the Year honours for not only the All-Australian team at the Under-18s Championships, but also for the Talent League Team of the Year. Just a clean ball user, plenty of speed and endurance as well. So a really quick burst of speed, but at the same time can run out. Did well 2-kilometre time trial. Good endurance player, good ball winner, can push up the ground and play midfield. And I think he's just kind of a little role player that the Giants might like, a bit like Lockie Ash actually. And once Lockie Ash maybe pushes further up the ground and could play midfield roles, or Lockie Whitfield, he's nearing that 30 age mark and in the final years of his career to come in the next 3-4 years, then Roberts could be the one to kind of step up after that. They picked up Colin Sanchez in the first edition mock draft, and he's one I think his range is quite wide open. Could really be anywhere from 20 to 40, and just more of a forward spark for them. But like we said, if they're picking up Nick Watson in with their first pick, they definitely don't need someone like Sanchez as well. And Roberts is kind of a countering smaller option for them. So another one out of Sandringham Dragons to head to the Giants there.
Yep. And pick 21, so Hawthorn should be taking their first father-son bid. The second of this first round, so Will McCabe.
Yeah, it's going to be one of 2 father-son bids, and they could even have some NGA ties in the night. But for night 1, it's going to be that first pick they take, and then Will McCabe as well, which is kind of why I think if they don't take Curtin and they hope for a McKercher, it's going to work out, because Will McCabe is a key defender, good intercept marking and aerial presence, just good jukes on him, and has a pretty decent vertical leap as well. Son of Luke McCabe, so wasn't a key defender, but his son certainly is, and stands at 197 centimetres. So he's a pretty tall one as well, with time to develop, hopefully. So you got your James Sicily's, Frosts and Scrimshaws that will kind of lead the charge over the next couple of years. But the Hawks did try and add to their backline this year through free agency and trade, so they didn't manage to do so, and McCabe could instead be the guy that maybe gets some minutes in down back for Sam Mitchell next year. So bid 21 would be, I think the Hawks would be pretty happy. Could come as as early as maybe 15, and 15 to 25 is probably that range for Will McCabe.
Yep, and Sicily would be a great one to learn under for that role. So pick 22 and 23 will be North. So Mitch Edwards, 22.
Yeah, so they've got the next 2 picks, and Mitch Edwards, ruckman out of WA, was probably a top 10 prospect entering this year. Whether it's injury and form, a few things probably stacked up against him, and he comes up a little bit in this draft. So I think he went it's the last selection in the first round in our first mock draft, and with the Roos probably looking at a ruckman and just a young emerging ruckman who they can give time to develop. Mitch Edwards is exactly that. Stands at 206 centimetres tall, probably just needs some time to develop and some senior experience at VFL level before getting a good run. Bit like what the Bulldogs were able to pull off with Tim English, just patience is the game. And that'll be one that I think would work quite nicely for them if they can get him to reach his full potential, because he could really come out as one of the best prospects of this class. Just had probably a bit of a down year compared to his bottom age campaign.
Yep. And with a 23 North Tube taking Archie Reed.
Yeah, younger brother of Essendon defender Zach Reed. Just probably needs a bit more consistency, but he's a really good tall forward, and he also probably bettered his ruck craft. Probably not something he had as much heading into this year, and was able to take on some ruck duties for Gippsland and showed some positives there. But his leading patterns and goal kicking is really good. And they probably need a key forward as well at some point in this draft. And with the first 5 picks, they probably need to be picking up one of the ones that are available. And there aren't obviously that many. Like you look at Jordan Croft and Jed Walter, those guys are tied up to other clubs. So outside of maybe Nate Caddy, Archie Reed's probably the best available. So they'll be quite happy if they pick up him in the first round with one of those 5 selections, I think. And ideally, in this case, it's their last one. So that'll be a nice one, and just need a bit more building around Nick Larkey, I think, for the years to come. So Archie Reed's the third in that little group for the Roos, and the 5th overall in their first round plans.
Yep. And at pick 24, so the Pies' first selection, one of my favourite names in the draft order, Colton Bolstrom.
Yeah, this is going to be a nice one for the Pies. He went, in our first edition, he went at pick 17. So it wasn't really available to them, and he slides 7 picks in this draft. And in that one as well, Harry Dimatea was the one they came away with. So one of those 2 guys they'll be hoping is available. They're just kind of those X-Factor type players. A bit of pep in their step, and Tholstrup's that kind of Zerha, excitement machine at half forward. Can really get some people in the stands on their feet. And out of WA, had a pretty decent national champs, got some good senior experience for Subiaco in the Waffle. It just has this explosiveness and smarts in front of goal. Can play through midfield, but I think he'll suit Collingwood's forward line quite nicely. Probably won't break in there straight away. Now that they've got Lockie Schultz, Bobby Hill, Byron McCreary, but there could be opportunities there down the road for sure.
Yeah, Pies have enough X factor in that team, I think. So pick 25, Adelaide, Will Green.
Yeah, Northern Knights ruckman, and as we mentioned earlier, they'll probably look for a ruck. Mitch Edwards off the board in this draft. He wasn't in the first one, but they still stuck with Will Green in both of our mock drafts. Taylor Goad's another one. He's more local, but I'm not sure if they're going to want to go down the local path as much as they might want to go for the best available. And Will Green's a ruckman that can also be afforded a bit of time to develop. They've got Riley Thilthorpe kind of able to help Riley O'Brien a little bit as well over the next few years. And by the time O'Brien needs to hand the baton over, it could be to Thilthorpe, or it could be to someone like Green, and Thilthorpe kind of plays that more forward role. So not a bad mover around the ground. Not the most athletically gifted, but 204 centimeters, 93 kilos, big body already. Uses that to kind of work himself under the ruck contests and in marking contests as well. So with Adelaide's third pick, it's a ruckman, probably a good chance it could be Will Green.
Yep. And pick 26, Sydney, Caden Cleary, so match academy bid.
Yeah, so the Saints kind of putting a bid in here for Caden Cleary. Obviously, St Kilda would love a real inside ball, contested ball winner, and that's exactly what Caden Cleary is. That's maybe why they forced this bid, and Sydney will have the points to match it. Wasn't selected in our first mock draft, so he's kind of the first of a few that kind of earned their first selection over the 2 counts. But yeah, he's really exciting. One of the better players for the Allies this year, was part of the under-18s All-Australian side, and in what was quite an Allies-dominated All-Australian side. But he's next to Sanders and McKercher in kind of the numbers they put up this year. But obviously he has ties to the Swans, and he'll be another one who certainly could be playing AFL level next year. Had a decent run in the VFL with the Swans, but they probably don't need a midfielder just yet. But at the same time, he'll be able to work under someone like Taylor Adams now, and that'll work quite nicely for the Swans. So first round bid for Caden Cleary. It could come a lot earlier. He's kind of a hard one to read. I think he's really well rated. It's just a matter of if clubs are going to be happy to pick him up, earlier than the top 20, earlier than the inside the top 20, I should say. One to watch, I guess, in the second half of the draft for the first round.
Yep. And at pick 27, so the Saints with Charlie Edwards.
Another one who wasn't selected. I think we had the Saints picking up Logan Morris in our first draft, but Charlie Edwards would be a really smart one for the Saints. A taller midfield presence, but he also has speed on his side. So we know Ross Lyon probably likes that bit of overlap and run and speed game. And I think someone like Charlie Edwards who can also work on the inside and kind of complement their midfield and engine room nicely, which is kind of what Lyon said at the end of this year, is that they probably need more support around someone like Jack Steele. And again, he's another Sandringham boy. So we join Ollie Murphy, a couple of local kids at Moorabbin. Would be quite nice, I think, for them in their first round. So I think we had Tholstrup and Murphy in the first draft, which is kind of some forward spark and a key defender for the Saints. And then in this one, Murphy again and Edwards. It's Morris and Tholstrup in the first draft, and then Murphy and Edwards in this draft. So a few options for the Saints. They're obviously going to have a fair bit to look at when they're on the clock both times. But a couple of local boys in this count might be quite nice for them.
Yep. All right, and last one, pick 28, last of the first round. It's a massive first round. So Carlton with Warman Luau.
Yeah, so Western Bulldogs NGA talent. So obviously he's not sliding past pick 40, and that'll mean he won't go to the Dogs. In this case, he goes to Carlton. A bit of I think defensive half run and polish might be nice for the Blues to consider, and they won't be short on options there. Tove Jath's another one, another NGA kid, and he's linked to Hawthorn. In our first mock draft, we had them looking at a ruckman, so that's another one as well. They picked up Mitch Edwards, obviously wasn't available in this count, neither was Will Green, so that's where Taylor Goad could be picked up. But Warman Luau is another player who can kind of learn off some of the best in the game. You look at a Sam Docherty, you look at Adam Sard, and they'll have some nice options there for future building. They've done quite nicely to build their wing spots, their forward lines, constructed quite nicely. They've got some solid key defenders. And now it's kind of maybe just looking at some run out of halfback, and Warman Luau is one of the better ones. Coates Talent League Team of the Year player. And just one that the Dogs will have to miss out on, unfortunately, with a high bid, which you can expect he'll probably get a bid in the top 40. So, that will cap off pick 28, the last pick in our mock draft for the first round.
Yep. Good stuff. Right, massive first round. So compared to the first mock draft and this second one, so this is more of an alternative selections.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so it's the same. No change to the draft order. It's more just like looking at when some bids might come, and if they're not coming, then when else they could come, and as well as that, if a club's weighing up 2 to 3 prospects at one pick, how it would work in one scenario, and then what other ways it could work in other scenarios. So I'll have a third one come out the day of the draft, so that's a week from today as well, and that'll maybe be more of a finalised guesstimate type, where these two are kind of just looking at different outcomes that are probably possible, and kind of, like we said, the ripple effect of if this guy's taken early, then this club all of a sudden will have to change their selection, and so on and so forth. So just some stuff to consider, some names to kind of keep in mind, and like I said, I think there's 3 changes as far as the players taken, and in this case there was an extra selection. We only had 27. And then Caden Cleary had a bid in our first mock draft, so a few changes there as well. But you can read both of those on zerohanger.com.
Yep, beautiful. All right, that's some interesting stuff there. Lots of good names. It's going to be a pretty fun draft period. We're going to have lots of content on the YouTube channel, and of course at zerohanger.com. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, Phoenix.
And don't forget, you can catch all the latest news at zerohanger.com. Subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Send in some stuff to the mailbag, and we'll see you next time.
Ciao.